was sleeping through another night, feeling decent. Still had seen quite a mess, was a little perturbed by that. Thinking about how I was going to lay out my new place. When I got up, I had a meal. Started hauling stuff. My fire had gone out again. I decided to butcher up that bird that had died. The dog was eating. It didn't make too much meat. I got one meal. The dog ate a bunch of the other meat. But I had some other stuff laying around, so I decided to cook it up. Wasn't doing the best for food. After that, I started hauling stuff to my new place. Some lady was passing by. Joshua was her name. I chose to ignore that. Just kept right on setting stuff up in my new place. There was plenty of lights laying around. Some other equipment I was going to nab. So I took it, got it set up. After a while, it was time to chill out. Mess around with that game board I'd found. I also decided to do a little bit of cleaning. The place was pretty disgusting. I had a good time with the game. After that I cleaned. I had a meal. Once I was done, which got me sick. I filled my fire, and then I barfed all over the place. Which wasn't too cool. Decided to set up a little spot for the dog. So I put a roof up, told him where to lay. Not sure that guy's gonna stick around, but if he does, I'm happy to have him. After that, I was off to bed. It wasn't sweet dreams. My stomach was hurting like nobody's business. And when I got up, decided to try and eat something. Man, this place is a mess. I ate it standing up in the freezer, which wasn't the best play. Decided to do a little more cleaning after that. Try and keep the place tidy here. Next up, I had to haul all kinds of stuff from my old place into my new. Still a little bit worried as I was cleaning about all the attention the city might attract. Maybe I'd better get on out of here. We'll see how it goes. Some of my meat rotted away, but that was no big deal as I was standing around tossing stones, trying to chill out, just have a little break from all the work. I was recovering from the food poisoning. It was time for another meal as well. So once I was done tossing stones, had a meal, set up my table so I'd have a place to eat without standing up. I kept refueling that fire. Not sure why. I built some vents. I ran around, grabbing stuff. There was a nice little reading table nearby, so I took that before bed. And then I laid down, feeling better, not sick anymore. When I woke up, it was mealtime again. I started bringing stuff over, furniture from my old place to my new. Set up some paintings too. Felt like a nice little touch. Even brought the video game over. Not that I'd even played it yet. Feels like a weird thing to do to be playing video games. So much chaos potentially going on around here. I kept working. Finding lights. Found a cook stove. So I brought that over. Better than cooking on that fire. I was gonna have to clean this place up if I was gonna cook food. God knows I've been sick enough around here. Worked on a second freezer so I could keep my food frozen. And that seemed to work out just fine. This little building be just what I needed. I found a butcher table, so I got that put in place as well. I did some cleaning in my freezer. Some disassembling some power cables I didn't no longer need. And then I sat down just to chill out for a little bit. There was still blood on the floor, but the place was mostly clean. I was feeling pretty good about the progress I was making. After that, it was off to bed once again. When I woke up, I started taking apart these cables that were everywhere. And some cleaning was in order after that. I got a note. There was a bandit camp nearby someone wanted destroyed as I was doing some cleaning. But I just let it go. I had to get myself secure before I can commit to taking care of anybody else's problems around here. The place was still quite a mess, so I did a bunch of cleaning. There were some camels that had wandered in, and it occurred to me I was quite out of food. So I grabbed my shotgun, headed on down, see if I could get one of them. They were running like mad from me. I was giving chase. Decided maybe I'd better take more than one. So I shot one of them dead, after I finally caught up with them all. Shot the other one dead as well. Snuck up on a third, put him out of it. I decided I'd see if I could tame the last one, although after the horrors he'd seen, who knows if he'd want to join me. But I could really use a pack animal in case I needed to get on out of here in a hurry. This back room in my place was still quite a mess, so I spent a little bit of time cleaning it. But there were still a couple camels that needed to be hauled, so I went and got them. Didn't want to let them rot too bad. I got them all dragged back. Decided I'd better make some meals, so I butchered up one of those camels. I got a fair amount of meat out of them too, enough for about 15 meals, which is pretty great. My dog needed some attention. I was going to have to keep him trained up. So I spent some time talking to him. I didn't know much about animals though, so I didn't really have any luck. When I got back, I cooked a meal. I ate a meal. And then I decided to mess around with that game board some more. It was pretty fun, just figuring it out, putzing around. Felt nice to sit for a while. And after that I was off to bed. When I woke up, did some more cooking. There was plenty of meat from the camel. So I worked on that for a spell, thinking about how best to handle that ship. I had a gun, turret that I'd found. Worked with the dog again, but butter wasn't taking to me too well. Had myself another meal, and it was right back to cooking. While I was cooking, some cargo pods fell out of the sky. A whole bunch of apples. Man, that's a welcome treat. Some kind of fruit or vegetable. Not all this weird meat I've been eating. So I brought them in. If I was going to end up traveling, I was going to have to figure out how to make some food that would travel well. That's a thought I had as I was working with that camel, trying to get him trained. Next up, I had to haul stuff from my old place to my new. I left the door on my kitchen open, decided I was going to freeze the kitchen as well as the freezer, just to make things a little simpler. And I hauled a bunch of stuff in. After that I decided to mess around with the telescope, and after that it was bedtime. Another day had gone by, but I was feeling pretty good. I didn't have anything to complain about. The last few things were almost hauled in, from my old place to my new. I worked on that. Some more cargo pods fell out of the sky. This time it happened to be rice, so I went and grabbed all that up. Brought it all back. And it was time to have myself another meal. The place was getting a little messy again, so I tidied up before running out to see if I could tame that camel again. I tried everything I knew, but it didn't work. Next up I had to deal with Butters. That didn't go so well either. And after that, it was time to get back to cooking. There was still a lot of meat laying around. I hauled stuff around, putting steel away, picking up wood chunks. Decided I was going to deconstruct my old home. Ran out to grab another light, which was sitting in a building nearby. Just to keep my place well lit, that'd be nice. After that, a meal was in order once again. Decided to do a little more cleaning before hitting the hay for the night. When I woke up, I built a little bit of floor. That needed doing. There was a spot missing. Then I was off, work with that camel a little more. I didn't have any luck though, as you'd expect. After that, it was Butter's turn. Tried to give him some meat and some apples, and it worked. What do you know? He was still a hungry guy. I was gonna have to sort out some food for these animals. I was a little worried about what I was gonna feed him. I was messing around with my board game again, moving the stones around. When I got done with that, I built some power cable. And then I went and took some doors down. Decided maybe I'd better get the roof out of there before it falls on my head. So I took roof down, carried some supplies in, got back to dealing with Butter some more. I get this guy all trained up, probably help me haul stuff around, which would be fantastic. Looked like a smart dog, seemed to be taking well to it. And he was hanging out as I was pulling the building apart. Eventually I got done with that, carried what I could inside, and sat down for a meal. That camel wandered way off down south. I went and talked to it, but it fell asleep as soon as I got there, so I decided to do the same. I was feeling pretty good. When I got up, decided to lay down, just do some cloud watching for a bit, and stare at the sky, wonder how all this mess is going to turn out. This planet's cursed, I tell you. All these aliens, hostile as can be. I got done, I had a meal. I decided I'd butcher up one of them camels so I'd have some meat. I could keep working with Butter. Didn't want to use all my veggies on him. So I butchered up the camel. And made a ton of meat, which was fantastic. That other camel was still wandering around, so I went and talked to it. Tried to get it to join me. He didn't have much interest though. I ran back. It was Butter's turn once again. And Butter was taken to it, so that was great. My gun had broken down by then, so I grabbed some new components, put them on in there. Decided I was going to move it to a smarter spot. So I did that, and I got back to ripping walls down, taking up floors. It was quite the process around here, but I needed some security, and this is one good way to get it. While I was working on that, I just snapped. My mood had got too bad. I couldn't control myself. I was so sad, frustrated, scared. Just ended up wandering around for a while, not giving much of a concern to anything. Forgot about the animals. My power was flickering. About that time, some weird tunnel opened up down in the south. Some crazy looking critters came pouring out of it. They started mining. Man, they were freaky looking. I didn't really want to mess with them too much. At the minute, I couldn't be trouble to do anything though. So they were mining as I was wandering about. They were building walls as well, which is pretty interesting. Their tunnel looked pretty freaky scary too. Those weird tentacles and stuff. They made quick work of all the stone that was around, that's for sure. Looked like they were building some kind of fort down there. I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm not terribly happy with it. A merchant showed up at that point. Some kind of slave or pirate fellows. Unfortunately, they made quick work of those weird critters that had come out of the ground. Looked like only one of them got hurt too. That was one of those other kind of weird aliens with them, which I didn't care for too much. Still didn't care for much of anything, in all honesty. I was just wandering around, still feeling frustrated, sad. Transport pod crashed down at that time too. A guy named Flores. He had a pretty sweet beard on him. He didn't look like he was doing too well. The alien with that caravan got struck by lightning. That was pretty nuts. I finally came to my senses, had a meal, and went to bed. Decided maybe I'd better trade with those guys in case they decide to get on out of here. Turns out that alien was a slave of theirs. They had a couple human slaves as well. I didn't want to get involved with that. I'm not sure what kind of people they were. I didn't want to find out. Thought about what best to sell them, what best to buy. I had all kinds of drugs, gold. So in the end, I sold some of each, which they were happy to have. They got me a bunch of silver, a little bit of drugs to keep me awake, even though I had a big stockpile of that already. The power's still flickering. I decided to put in another wind turbine. I was also going to have to destroy that weird tunnel. That thing was spawning eggs somehow. I didn't want anything to do with that. So I grabbed my shotgun, ran on down there, started blasting them to bits. It didn't take much, fortunately. So I shot the 3 eggs down that were there. Decided just to keep blasting at that tunnel. Wasn't much else I could do. I shot it up pretty good. And eventually it collapsed on itself, which was great. Butter came to see what all the noise was. Fortunately, there were no critters around. I looked at those alien carcasses laying there and decided maybe I'd try and butcher them up and see what they were made of. That'd be pretty interesting. Some kind of crazy thing, if I could even get through those exoskeletons they had. I carried some supplies in at that point. I had a whole mess of them laying there. I'd completely forgotten about Flores. I laid down to sleep. It occurred to me he was still laying in the dirt down there. So I decided to see if I could help the guy out. I jumped up, ran on down there to rescue him. He'd been bleeding pretty good. And he had an infection as well, which didn't bode well. I didn't do the best job tending him, being that it was dark. There'd been a lightning storm. Some of the buildings to the south were burning. When I got up, I had myself a meal. Decided to clean up some of that alien blood that'd been splattered around after it got struck by lightning. I was thinking how gross that was as I was chilling out, just relaxing. A nice little hangout room. When I got up, I fed Flores. He was talking, but he was feverish. Decided maybe I'd better train that dromedary again. Roofs were collapsing nearby, making quite a ruckus. I got somebody reaching out, saying there was a bandit camp nearby they wanted destroyed, but I certainly wasn't in a position to deal with that right now. Next up, I went on in and tended to Flores' infection again. It was getting pretty bad. He was feverish, in pretty bad shape. There wasn't much else I could do for him, though. Worked with that dog a little more. Didn't have any luck. Butter was crabby that day. Hopefully he wasn't eating them alien things. After that, it was time for a little science, so I ran over there and grabbed one of them. Butchered him on up. Then I went and got the other. While I was working on him, something went wrong. He exploded on me or something. Acid blood spilled out. I found some interesting weapon items on him, but I was covered in acid. I got burned pretty bad. I went and tended myself, not as well as I would have liked. Then I had myself a meal. Then I fed Flores. Decided to clean up and where he was laying, and some of my other rooms as well. The power was flickering on and off. I cleaned up the acid in front of my butcher table. And I spent a little bit of time working with Butter till he went to sleep on me. I dropped off a bunch of supplies. I went to bed right as Flores apparently died. Turns out I didn't get to that infection soon enough. And that's unfortunate. There was a few graves nearby, so I guess he'd go in the ground with the rest of the people. I was feeling pretty good. Just chilling out. Roofs were collapsing down south. Flores had left me some meals and a gun, so I took that. Could be useful, and I buried him. Said a few solemn words, and it was time to move on. That dromedary had wandered way down south, so I ran on down there. Finally, I had some success. Tamed the bugger. I had to set up a little bed for him. But it'd be nice to be able to carry some of this stuff out of here when I decide to leave. About that time, a whole herd of capybaras came through. When I was working with butter, some cargo pods fell out of the sky. A whole slew of pineapple. Well, that's pretty awesome. More food the merrier as far as I'm concerned. I ran past them capybaras. Neither of us paid each other any heed. And then I had to get to training that dromedary. Now that he was tame, I had to make him obedient. It's going to be a long effort though, considering I know nothing about dromedaries. I had plenty of meat for meals, and I was working with butter, seeing if he wanted some pineapple. It turns out he did. Succeeded in training him a little bit. And I thought I'd celebrate by going over and tossing some stones. And the animals are milling about. I had myself a meal. Decided to work with that dromedary a little bit more. And then I went back to cooking. Got through a bunch. I was sleeping when a bunch more dromedaries wandered in. That gives me 3 total now. Starting to get too many animals for my own liking, in all honesty. But that means more stuff I can carry if I have to leave. So that'll be just fine with me, assuming they all stay tame. I went back to cooking meals, taking breaks to work with all these critters that I had. Seemed like a never-ending problem. You have critters, just gives you more work. Next up I had to work with butter. I planned out a spot to do some research, maybe figure things out. If I could at least figure out how to make some food that would travel well, that'd be fantastic. I went back to cooking meals. Even made one using some of that crazy alien meat before I thought better of it. Not sure how that's gonna taste. Decided to rip down a bunch of roofs nearby. I was gonna deconstruct a bunch of buildings and see if I could set up a secure perimeter here. I also had to work with these dromedaries. See if I could get them all tamed up. That'd be right nice. And I worked with butter some more as well when I could. Still wasn't having much luck anywhere. I was learning though. Once you have 3 dromedaries, you can kind of figure out their little behaviors. Worked with them, took down roofs. There was a few buildings around I was going to get rid of. See if I could get some supplies together. I needed a bunch of stones, what I really wanted, but I had to make do with what I could find. Between the walls and the floors of these buildings though, should work out alright. After that I sat down and chilled out playing my board game again. My power was still flickering. I never actually built that turbine I wanted. It was getting pretty cold out at night, so I was going to have to make it a priority to get that turbine built so my heater would actually work. Next, I had a meal, went back to working with the critters. Oh, butter. Maybe I'd name these dromedaries too if they hung out long enough. I didn't want to get too attached in case I had to start butchering them, but at least I wouldn't have to butcher the dog to survive. Next up, time to rip some roofs down. And then I decided maybe that turbine should be higher priority. There was a bunch of steel laying around, even a couple components, so I had everything I needed. I got to work on that, and before too long that was done. Butter needed some attention again. He liked apples, so that worked out pretty well. I ran down inside and grabbed some rice and apples. Decided on my way out to do some more cleaning. There was still blood everywhere from that weird alien thing I'd shot up. So I got most of that done. Things just seem to stay a pigsty around here no matter what I do. But that's alright. When the cleaning was done, I had myself a meal. Went and putzed around with my telescope a bit. It's weird the things you can see in the daytime through the sky. The power was still flickering pretty good. despite having a second wind turbine. Next up, I worked with the animals a little more. It's getting a little out of hand how much time I was spending with them. After that, it was off to bed. While sleeping, some cargo pods fell out of the sky. Some kind of painting supplies. Decided I'd run over and grab it when I got up. Maybe I could do some painting if I really needed to chill out. So I ran on out to grab that stuff. And got it set up where it belonged. These dromedaries needed some shearing, it looked like. The fur was getting all matted and gross, so I tried to do one, but I failed. Then I tried to work with them a bit. I failed again. It's getting a little bit frustrating. I decided to build my workbench instead. I could have some success with that. Then I could tinker around with stuff. Maybe do some learning. I had an extra chair, so I put that over there. And my goal was to figure out how to make some kind of food I could travel with. Next up, butter needed some attention, but I didn't have any luck. Same goes for the dromedary. I hauled stuff in, I tied it up, and I worked with the animals more. There was a real creepy old building nearby. Wasn't sure what to do about that. After that, I finally got back, ripping down some roofs. Seemed like these animals required no end of attention. I did that. I ate some of the meals Flores had left me. Poor guy. If I wouldn't have been out of my mind, I'm sure I could have saved that fella. I ripped down roofs. I worked with butter. I worked with the dromedary. I had much better luck with butter than I did with them camel things. And I got back to ripping down roofs. Seemed like there was no end to roofs. Let the supplies I'd get be invaluable if I was going to be secure. I was off to bed after that. Been a long day. Spending way too much time working with these stupid animals as far as I was concerned. And when I got up, the meal was in order. The animals were all still sleeping. My meals became infested with that insect meat, and that was making me kind of crabby. I went back to working with these dromedaries. Decided it was frustrating. I was just going to chill out for a little while. Still liked this armor. Color wasn't really my style, but it felt cool. Little servos and stuff turning when I move. After that, back to animal work. I was going to have to clean up the outside of this joint too. It was such a mess everywhere. Blood and filth, detritus, building rubble, you name it. It's pretty gross as I was working with the dog again. Once the dog had been dealt with, pulled some roofs down, and those were all done, so I got back to ripping up floors, occasionally stopping to work with one of the critters. Not sure what those guys were eating. They didn't seem to be starving. So I got the floors ripped up. I had myself a meal. And then I did some cleaning. It's such a mess around here still. Only a little bit of floor remained. Once that was done, I could get to those buildings. And then I could build some defenses. Decided I was going to try and plant some rice. See if I could get something to grow. Sitting around waiting for food to fall out of the sky is not the best idea as far as I'm concerned. So I ripped up floors, worked with the dromedary, then I got to planting that rice before it was time to get off to bed. I slept relatively well that night. Somebody reached out to me. They knew there was an item nearby, and it looked like a pretty awesome item, in fact. Some kind of fancy futuristic bionic arm. Not even sure what that's about, but I was deeply intrigued. Sadly, that whole stack of meals I made wasn't what it should have been. I didn't know which one the insect meat had gone into, so every time I ate one, I got crabby, just thinking about eating one of them nasty things. I milked the dromedary, had some success, dragged in a bunch of supplies from the floors and walls I'd ripped down. And once in a while, worked with the dromedaries. Decided to chill out for a bit, in between my gun, my telescope, do some sky watching. The dromedary milk made up a nice meal, and then I got back, ripping down walls. I was gonna get a ton of steel, that was for sure. I'd get this place tidied up one way or the other. If I have to rip the whole darn city down. I'm sure at some point somebody's gonna take offense to the fact that I'm here. Come and try and get all the plunder I found for themselves. And if that happens, I'd have to hightail it out of here. Especially if they showed up in force. It's a little worrisome as I was ripping down walls and disassembling doors. And I made good progress before having to get back, work with that dromedary. My supply room was filling up pretty fast, but I had plenty of space for a backup. After that I was off to bed. It had been a long and very busy couple days. I was a little crabby about the mess around here, but things seemed to be going alright. The city was quiet for the minute. That's a good thing, no crazy aliens around. So for now, I slept well, despite the mess.